Guys, let me ask you this question. Really important question. What's your story? How do you tell it? How do you make it interesting? How do you make it compelling so people want to hear it? And most importantly, how do you make it entertaining and memorable? Well, today's guest, Lyn Graft, is someone who has spent his entire career and his life's work helping pull that story out of people like you and me. Lyn is someone that I met a good number of years ago, and he is someone that I knew I would instantly bond with because his energy, his enthusiasm, his easygoing, super chill, but incredibly impressive, powerful way just has this way of sucking you in. Now, Lyn is an amazing individual. He's a keynote speaker. He's an author. He wrote a book called Start With Story. He helps entrepreneurs at all different phases tell their story. He's got, I don't know how many stories he's told for entrepreneurs, thousands at this point. He has a website called LG Pictures that you got to check out. And also Lyn Graft, LYNGRAFT.com is his personal website. You can learn more about him. But I'm so grateful that he agreed to be on the Ripple Effect podcast. I can't wait to get into this conversation with him and to hear how incredibly important stories are for you and for me to understand, appreciate, and most importantly, tell. So with no further ado, let's get into it with storytelling master Lyn Graft. Guys, I am super excited to introduce you to Lyn Graft. Lyn, how are you doing? Welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast.
Steve, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Another day here in Austin, paradise. Can't complain. It's a beautiful, sunny 60 degrees out there. So excited.
Oh yeah, we this is the Chamber of Commerce kind of day. I mean, this is what we were longing for. Come back in July. Yeah, it's definitely good. This is why we live here for the 2 weeks we get this out of the entire year.
And I use that phrase all the time. I'll be traveling around the country. It's a Chamber of Commerce day. And people are like, what? I'm like, this is how you recruit people to come work here. So yeah, or live here, I should say. But we don't want any more people here, unfortunately. So
absolutely. Yeah, we're closed for business. You're welcome to come visit, spend some money, but go home, right? So, I was speaking at an event in Omaha and people were like, I've thought about going to Austin. I'm like, oh no, we have no more room. So please do not come.
Yep, no vacancy at all. It's just like, we're full.
Yeah. Well, I am super jazzed that you are on the Ripple Effect podcast today because we've been trying to do this for a while. I am a huge fan of you and your work. I don't even know if you remember when we first met each other, but I was telling everybody in your intro, you're probably one of the nicest, most authentic guys I have ever met. And that's not just here in Austin, that's in general. And I think part of that comes from, we both come from the New Mexico area, right? So we kind of have this, this connection to the Southwest, and we end up in a great town like Austin. But when you and I first met, we were actually at an event for Harvey McKay way back when. Do you remember that?
No.
It was his launch of his book Fired Up, and you and I ended up in a special event for authors, or excuse me. Kind of a behind the scene to meet the author, and you and I ended up on the line together, and that's how we started talking.
Wow. I forgot. I knew we met at one of those events. I didn't know it was Harvey McKay. Wow.
Yeah. And then of course we knew Ingrid Vandervelt in the we had that friendship in common, and it was just, as we started talking, we knew a number of people, but I have always really admired you and kind of the type of entrepreneur that you've been, but I want my audience to get a feel for who you are. And you go by LG, so we're going to make that super simple, right? But I want to tell us how LG became LG. A little bit of the origin story, and then we'll dive into story. So, and that as a topic.
Well, we all get nicknames growing up. So one of the nicknames I got was, my full name is Linwood. So a lot of people in my family, I'm known as Uncle Linwood. My family got a bunch of nieces and nephews. My sisters call me Uncle, and we got 4 sisters, Cindy, Lindy, Mindy. They always call me Linwood. My mom, when she's upset at me, calls me Linwood. But eventually I wanted to get some nicknames. In Hollywood I liked. And then another name that came about that I didn't like as much, my last name is Graft. So my best friends call me Skin Graft, which is not the most endearing nickname. So I really
Yep.
tried to modify that from that perspective. But much like you, Steve, my soul is still in New Mexico. It will probably always be there, no matter where my physical body is. It's just an amazing place to grow up. I believe it. We're so friendly there. It's because we're so just not densely populated. A million
Right.
people, fifth largest state in the union, and you could drive for miles, and that's why you wave at everybody on the road. So I think that's part of it. But
Absolutely.
I did my undergrad there, and just kind of a quick background, became an engineer, decided in the first couple of years didn't want to do that, quit, became a ski instructor, fell in love with skiing, met a bunch of entrepreneurs on the lifts. That's kind of how I got that entrepreneurial bug going, just spending time on a 20-minute lift with all these business owners that were
And
there
what
for the.
ski resort was this at?
Well, I taught at 4 ski areas total: Ski Patch in New Mexico,
Yep.
Sunrise in Arizona, Lake Tahoe, and also Breckenridge. But
Oh,
it was one of those things, Steve. When you're around passionate people that are doing what they love, and they happen to be business owners, I knew in that early stage of my professional career, at some point, I wanted to own my own business, and that kind of led me down that path. Eventually, I went to the University of Texas MBA program, got my MBA with a focus on entrepreneurship, worked for Sabre American Airlines, and then I had an opportunity to work for a startup. It was the first time I ever had a key to a business here in Austin.
wow.
It was that opportunity to work in a super small employee number 7. I could open the door and close it. I was always working super hard. Then my best friend Ingrid, uh, she approached me and says, "Hey, I want to do this high tech startup, and I want you to help me." And myself, and her father became the 3 founders of that company.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was that company was a rocket ship in terms of we got tremendous press very quickly, got some funding very quickly, and then spent 3 or 4 years getting the rest of the funding. And then we got caught up in the .com craze. And unfortunately, all of our customers were .coms at the time. We had this
Ugh.
analytic e-commerce package, so our customers disappeared. We'd already raised 7 million, and we were going for another 10 million. So we got caught up in that. Had to shut the
Yep.
company down.
Oh,
And I remember this specifically after that company. I said, I'm sitting in this 10,000 square foot office that we had just leased by myself. And I'm thinking, I'm downloading MP3 files because I didn't know what I wanted to do next.
uh,
I figure, the next thing I want to do, I want to enjoy it. I want to be good at it. And then I'd like to make some money at it. And that was my criteria that led me on a journey of doing different things that eventually led me to working on a video project that became a television show.
yeah.
And that was over with Ingrid as well. And that journey, I created a company called LG Pictures. LG by my nickname, LG Pictures. I had a dog named Fitty G, so we all kind of matched along those lines. So that's where the origin of LG comes from, that journey, those experiences, and then just wanting to have at least a side company with my name in it to kind of represent kind of who I was, what I was doing.
Well, and I actually honestly remember when you and I met, you guys were pre-launch on the show American Made, and it was I watched that with I was committed to it. I recorded it. I had back in that time. I think I still have my TiVo, so I still had it recorded, and I would go back and watch because you guys had such a great way of pulling out some just unbelievable morsels from entrepreneurs like Red McCombs, Howard Schultz. And I love the approach that you took for the show. But tell us a little bit about that. And have you ever thought about revisiting that kind of approach in terms of that kind of show on that kind of network? Or tell us a little bit about how that came about and maybe what that journey taught you.
Steve, one thing I'll share with you is that I didn't know anything about television, didn't have any training or academic knowledge in that space. But the one thing I learned very quickly on when I'd been on that startup journey is I loved being around successful founders, hearing their stories, their wins, their losses, and everything in between. And I just loved being around that. And I found myself often, because we had some unique access to very successful founders in every industry that you can think of. I had a lot of friends asking me, "Oh, so share that story." So I talk about that time that we had with them
Mm-hmm.
before even filming them. And I believe that element of curiosity, that desire to ask questions, to learn the behind the facade, if you will, of what
Yeah.
they were dealing with, what was their vision like? Was this big aha moment, or was this iterative process that they came up with these really cool ideas? So that was the one thing I want founders to know is that that general curiosity nugget, you can use that to your advantage whenever you're talking about your business, your product, your offering, and say, how did that come about? What was that moment, that experience, that journey that was a catalyst for how you got around that road? And sometimes storytelling can be as simple as that. And that's what I
Yeah.
loved. I loved being in front of these incredibly successful people. I didn't need to be on camera. That was not the point. And Ingrid, she's much better looking and all kinds of energy. So I was super happy to put her on camera and me be the producer, the director, give her those questions, help guide the discussion, and then manage not only the pre-production process to create that environment, those questions, that narrative, but then the post-production process where we're adding music to it and editing and cutting and photos and videos and everything else. So what it was this incredible journey of learning how to put a television show at the time that had never really been done before, profiling a successful founder for an hour in primetime television. Prior to that, you might have a 20-minute, and it's really a 16-minute segment on 20 minutes, on 60 minutes.
Yep.
You might have a news piece at night, 5 minutes. You might have a documentary that's long format, but nobody's going to sit around and watch those. So we were trying to combine the entertainment, the excitement of what primetime television was,
Yeah.
and bridge that to what we know on the entrepreneurial journey. There's so much drama and excitement
Yeah.
and car crashes and everything going on. Is how do we translate that? And it was really hard to condense all that information and make 48 minutes, which is an hour-long TV show, into a compelling piece of content that people will stay and watch. At the time, it hadn't been done before, and it took us a while to figure it out. But it goes back to that curiosity thing.
Yeah.
We wanted to ask them the same questions you would, Steve, or that my mom wanted to ask them. We just kind of like, what did you do this? How did you do that? Where did you go from that? And then just turn that into a piece that people would want to watch.
Well, and you mission accomplished because it was a phenomenally done show. And I think about it now when I see things on like Bloomberg or any type of sort of business expose that's really trying to tell the backstory of how an entrepreneur became super successful. Somebody like a Mark Cuban or Elon Musk. You guys were doing that ahead of the curve, right? You were doing something that, like you said, hadn't been done. And every time I see one of these sort of features on one of these channels or someone's YouTube, I always think of what you guys did because you guys were real trailblazers in the approach that you took. And I know that has to be informed by a lot of what you were learning at the time, but at the same time, knowing the work that you do now, it seems like that is kind of part of your DNA in terms of how you pull the story out of whoever you might be talking to, an entrepreneur or even just an individual at a networking event. You're gifted at figuring out how to get people to really open up and be honest with you. I mean, I know that informed your book, Start with Story, and it's kind of an entrepreneur's guide to how to do that. Yeah, yeah. But tell me a little bit about that. Is that something that sort of was ingrained in you? Is that something you had to learn as you grew up, or how did that natural curiosity really kind of come to the surface?
As I look back in retrospect, I believe it was born around with my family. I have a
Okay.
big family, four sisters, nieces, nephews, brother-in-laws. So there's a lot of competition for airtime during the holidays and whenever we gather for events. And we just love to laugh. And laughing requires entertaining other people and laughing at yourself, laughing at them, laughing at the experience of the event. And if you were to boil down what storytelling and why we do what storytelling is and why we do it, it's because we're trying to make an emotional connection with
Yep.
people. And
Yep.
that emotional connection is what makes you laugh, what makes you smile, what makes you cry, what inspires you.
Creates a
And
ripple, right?
yeah, creates
Yeah.
that ripple effect. There's no question. I was looking to do things for my family, and my sisters are so funny. They're just great storytellers. My mom was an amazing storyteller, just all from everything you could think of. She's a beautiful, amazing, and a little bit crazy woman that always had great stories. So that it was a combination of curiosity, just wanting to know what these founders and how you got to where you're at right now, what makes you unique, what makes you special, what lights you up, understanding those elements, and then also not just sharing that information with somebody else, but packaging it in such a way so that I'm hopefully going to inspire you, I'm going to move you, I'm going to connect to you emotionally. I'm going to pull those emotional heartstrings. It's going to make you want to hear what I have to say, want to tell other people, and then have some type of call to action, if you will, without me telling you anything. So that really what it boils down to.
So as a ski instructor, when you were on the slopes or riding up on the ski lift with, some of these people that you had the opportunity to spend time with, I really resonate with that. I had a good friend in high school that was a couple of years older than me that actually, I remember him telling me part of the reason that he became a ski instructor was he got to meet people from all different walks of life, and it really pulled him out of his introverted shell. What were some of the what were some of the lessons that you learned along the way as you were kind of experiencing those opportunities to have those conversations? I mean, I would think this is a pretty formative approach to, what guided your work.
No question. When I believe that when I was on that chair talking with these other individuals, and then even beyond that, when I came to grad school, was selecting classes, attending professors that either I had or didn't have, there was always this fascination about who they were, where they came from, where the idea was, kind of evolved or germinated. So that desire to learn all those things and hearing what all these different individuals had to say. The first paid video project I ever had was a $15,000 project with the University of Texas, filming Dr. George Kosmetsky, the first billionaire in Texas you're
Yeah.
familiar with. And it was Ingrid, my best friend's mentor. And while we're filming him, and he's a very successful academic professional. He ran $2 billion companies at the same time, and
Very
he
down
made
to earth guy. Yeah,
oh
really
yeah, just
amazing.
accessible. And he made a statement. So Ingrid, to get this perspective on me and the legacy I want to leave behind, why don't you interview two of my other mentees? Ingrid being one of them. Michael Dell was one of them, and the other was Red McCombs. And we got to film in that first paid video project as a producer I'd ever done. I got to film three billionaire entrepreneurs that came from these incredibly diverse backgrounds. You had the academic and Dr. George Kosmetsky, two PhDs, and he used to fly around on two private jets all over the place to visit his companies, the ones he's on the board of, the government. And then you had Michael Dell, who was a kind of a college dropout, but while he was going to school, he put all his computer equipment in his bathtub. So whenever his parents came to his dorm room to visit him on the holidays or on weekends, they didn't know what he was really doing. And then you had Red McCombs, who grew up in Spur, Texas, population of about 150, who arrived to the University of Texas on a bus with 10 cents in his pocket and went on to become number 247 on the Forbes 400, owner of the Minnesota Vikings, and the San Antonio Spurs, largest independent car dealer in the country, and started Clear Channel. So it was the diversity of those individuals and how inspiring all of their stories were, and yet the kind of the similarities, but the difference and what, and I wanted to be around all of them, and I wanted to
Yeah.
share all those stories, and I believe that catalyst still runs through today. Everything that I'm doing is capturing these stories, sharing these stories, helping other entrepreneurs learn from my journey and those expert entrepreneurs.
So let me ask you, what's the biggest myth about storytelling entrepreneurs believe but aren't true?
The biggest one by far is that you need to have this complex, super sophisticated story structure. And the reason that entrepreneurs hear that is because they're told that by a lot of marketing experts or
Sure.
storytelling experts. They say you need to learn Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, which is a 13-step process of what you go through on the hero's journey. Or you need to learn Gustav Freytag's story structure, or you need to know what a protagonist, the antagonist, and a denouement is. Those are words I can't even pronounce, much less understand what they mean.
Yeah.
And when I was writing my book, I wanted to teach other people how to create their own story, and you got to have a methodology. So I started researching all these methodologies that were out there, and I got lost in that journey of learning, understanding what a story is and how to tell one. So the myth is that you needed one of those complex structures to create and tell your story as a founder, and I found that to be 100% false.
Yeah.
And I can verify that because I would ask some of these founders that I'd spend 1, 2, 3 days with, so how did you learn how to tell your story? And they're like, yeah, I don't really know. They didn't have this academic approach to it or just specific methodology. What they had was a unique experience to them that related to their business in some meaningful way, that was the catalyst for them starting that journey. Or it was the aha moment they surrounded the idea around. Or maybe it was this iterative process and they learned on this journey. It became a set of experiences. And it was kind of that light bulb moment of understanding that epiphany that a story is not this complex structure. It's simply you're building these ideas and a concept around this experience that is meaningful to you and your business, and then you share that with someone else.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And you can build on that, make it better and better and better, as opposed to needing a 13-step process.
Well, yeah, I saw your one of your most recent posts on LinkedIn where you were talking about, Joseph Campbell's, and the many steps that takes, and everybody thinks they have to have this approach before they start, but they really don't. I mean, so if you've got a founder that's watching right now that might want to say, well, I need to get better at telling my story. What are some tips or ideas that you might share with them? I mean, number one, you got to get your book, Start with Story. That would be my first suggestion. But
Thanks for the plug, Steve. I appreciate that.
you're welcome. I mean, it's an excellent book. It's excellent book. But what are some ideas that you might share with them to start formulating in their mind what those story, how to start to formulate that story?
Yeah, first and foremost, you want to do some homework. You got to put that elbow grease in, figure out what are those experiences, set of experiences, or one aha moment that you can build from. And sometimes that takes weeks, days, maybe even months, depending on where you're at, how much up. And you really want to write these things down. And as you look at that chronological history of your journey to becoming an entrepreneur or right when you started, you're looking for those special moments, those things that light you up or bring you down. They're just emotionally evocative to you as an individual. And you focus on those ones. And if maybe there's one, two, or if there's a five or six, and narrow it down to the two or three most emotionally evocative ones. And that's kind of how where you build your story from. That moment in time, let's say for instance, you're in the shower and you thought of this idea for this new toilet paper rolling contraption because that idea hasn't changed in 100 years. I don't know. Or maybe it's a moment where this is a woman I coached where she had an idea for what she calls a coffee bomb. And it was a way to put all these supplements and additives into not just a creamer, but this actual, like a little ball. And you drop it in your coffee and it would give nutrients. And what inspired her idea from that is that her dad passed away at too early of an age. And she always felt if I could have given him some supplements to help him with different medical issues he was facing, he'd still be here today. And that was the catalyst for her launching that coffee bombs business. And sometimes it's as simple as that. You're looking for those moments that really light you up, because if they light you up, either they give you excitement, they bring you down, they just get you going. Generally speaking, that's going to light other people up. You want to be that. So that's the first thing I would do, is start there. The second is, once you have that idea, is just keep iterating on it. Keep on sharing that with people. Hey, what do you think about this? This is my story. I'm thinking about pitching. And here's one thing that founders face all the time. About 95% of them, their story's too long.
Yeah.
It just is. We just have, like me, I'm just yapping. I got so much to say. I'm so excited about what I do. I could talk all day with you about storytelling.
But I think everybody will agree. We love listening to you. So, I mean, you could talk all day and I'd be here just tuning in.
I appreciate that. But most people got time constraints. So what you do is give yourself a time constraint. I don't care if it's 60 seconds, 120 seconds. If the first time, maybe it's 10 minutes. And just say, okay. And then just keep shortening it down. And that does two things. It physically, it brings the length of time down that you're going to be sharing the story. Two, it's making it more concise, because you're throwing out all the fluff. And if someone asks you, what color is my shirt? It says, well, it's not red. It's kind of like gray, but it's not. No, my shirt is blue. Okay. And it's a button down. So you get that, really tighten it up. And that's going to help your storytelling muscles, if you will, get better and stronger, because it's like I said, almost everybody's story is too long. and they generally get better the tighter they become.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, I know that you've talked about this before in one of the videos I saw that you had made, but a lot of times people when they're focused on their story, like you said, it's almost kind of like they share too much, and it's they don't have the time constraints. But one of the ways to get really precise is what's the headline, right? What's the headline of your story? Talk a little bit about that in terms of when somebody's thinking about, okay, how am I going to tell my story as the founder of this company, or how I became an entrepreneur, or get to this, this big thing that you want to share. Even as I was thinking about prepping for this interview today, even how you tell your story in an interview when you're looking for a new role or job.
You bet. And the way I like to think about it is, think of a hook that is going to draw that person in. And you need to have a hook as a headline, an opening line, and the objective of that hook is to get them to listen to what you have to say. You're not saying everything. And there's an old copywriting rule. The first line is to get them to read the second line. The second line is to get them to read the third line. So you want your hook to, first and foremost, grab their attention. Because if you don't grab their attention, Steve, it's done. You're not going to have a high probability of having a successful story, because they're not going to be listening to you the rest of the time. So you really got to hook them in. And we're talking 7 seconds if it's super short, 30 seconds if you have more time. And 30 seconds being, if you have a 5-minute pitch, you got about 20, 30 seconds to draw them in. If you're in an elevator, you got 3 to 4 seconds. If you're in a conversation, you got 7 to 15 seconds. So those are some time frames that hook really has to draw them in. And the way that you make a hook successful, there's a lot of different ways, but some of the most profound ones that I've found is to be very authentic, be very vulnerable, just speak from the heart and talk about why you're doing this, share something emotional, just look at something that's going to pull on their heartstrings. And one of the most powerful things I think of is the idea of the ripple. I remember specifically when you came up with that idea for the name. Yeah. I don't know if it's your book or a business at the time years ago. It's like, man, I love that, because in my life, what I'm trying to do is create a ripple effect that's not just going to impact you, it's everybody around you. And I'm really striking for that. So the way I might, if I was in your shoes, is like, I'm here to talk to you guys today because I want to create a ripple effect in your life and everybody around you's life by the content I have to bring to you today. So that's what you're looking for. Something that's going to go, wow, okay,
I'll pay listen attention. To the second.
Yeah, I'll pay attention. You got me. So that's where I'd focus on, is those initial few words, few seconds to draw them in so they want to hear more.
So let me test that theory, if you don't mind. So storytelling master, LG, gets in the snack business. What's the story?
That's a good one. All right. There's a lot of ways I could frame this, so I'm going to just pick one out of the air.
Perfect.
I was looking for a new calling in my life. And I ran into a guy at a PaleoFX conference where I was speaking at. He was giving away some free food, and I had my book I had just spoken on. And I said, hey, I'll trade you some trail mix for a book. And so what I'm using is kind of this emotional desire. I'm looking for something new in my life. And we all know what that's like, no matter what point in life, or business, personal, doesn't matter. And then I'm going to talk about a PaleoFX, which is this. It was actually the conference it's at. You may or may not know what PaleoFX is, but it sounds kind of interesting. See what that is.
Yeah.
And then I'll say something. I'm speaking. I have my book, and guy's got some food. And I tell him I'm swapping. So it's kind of fascinating.
Big trade, yes.
Yeah, big trade is that, and the trail mix, a book. You were speaking the paleo. So what you're looking to do, it's not always just emotional. Curiosity, as we go back to earlier, is one of the most powerful human habits that we have, or just desires. We all are very curious. It's why cliffhangers work so well. It's why facts work so well. So as an example, did you know that, let's see, what is the stat? I can't remember. People are 55% more likely to buy your product if you share it with a story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a stat I'm throwing at you. You're like, oh, okay. maybe I should learn about my story because it increases the probability someone's going to buy from me by 55%. So you're looking for elements like that. So it doesn't have to be emotional; it can just be fascinating. Wow, okay, let's hear more. Or like I'll give you another idea that you could do from a hook, and this could relate to your business or not. Did you know that birds navigate from the magnetic fields of the Earth? That's how they're able to travel 10,000 miles across the world. Like, whoa, that's fascinating. I don't know
Right.
where that's going, but maybe it's a planet Earth type of concept. But I don't care. Let me hear what else he has to say. So those are the ways you kind of draw that mind in, or pull on those heartstrings to keep them wanting more.
I love it. That's excellent. Well, since we touched on it, tell us about that venture into, or the organic trail mix, and how you were looking for something different and you landed on something different.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I've been mentoring CPG, consumer packaged goods companies, at that time for 5 or 6 years. And I decided, I don't want to do a CPG company. It's too hard.
Yeah.
Crazy business, very competitive. The margins, you have to sell a lot of what you make to make any money. I'm like, yeah. But then I met this guy at that conference. He happened to be a ski instructor and a professional skier. Just a
There's your
great,
connection point right there. Boom. Yeah.
yeah.
I love it.
And then while I'm talking to him, so he gave me his tube, and I'm just kind of eating out of it. I'm like, to myself, I'm like, this is really good. Keep talking, man. This is really good. And I stopped. I'm like, wait a second. What did you put in this? It's like crack. This is the best trail mix I've ever had. And he goes, well, I'm glad you asked. And he just goes off, man. He just started telling me about his backstory. This is a 2-hour conversation that we ended up paying for. But it was not only was it an amazing product, a great guy, there was instant trust and just an authenticity about him, our commonalities in the outdoors and everything else. And it was a very healthy product at the time. That's why I was at a Paleo FX conference in the first place to speak, because I love healthy foods, healthy habits,
Hmm.
working out. But it was the fact that he was really set on this mission for sustainability. So all of our packaging is plastic free, it's reusable, it's refillable, and we're one of the only plastic free brands in the space, which 98, 97% of all the consumer packaged goods companies out there, snack brands, use single use plastic. So here he'd come along and used, not only is it plastic free, it's reusable, refillable up to a year. So you're using less materials and you're using materials that do no harm to the planet. So it was those combination of factors of a great product that was good for you and it did no harm to the planet. I was like, wow. So I started working with him, started helping him, and over time, we struck a deal where I became an equity partner, and now I own part owner in the company with him. And it's part of my mission now is to get a product like this out there on the market.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys have done a phenomenal job. I actually have a friend that was in Florida, and he was showing a Instagram video, as he likes to do because he's very much into clean eating, and he happened to show one of your products. And I said, I know, one of the, guys that's involved in that. And he thought that was just so cool. So one of these days when he's in Austin, we're going to have to get together and, swap some stories. You would love him. But, it was, I mentioned the word connection points. For me, I talk about connection points as the things that make people unique and interesting to you, right? It's different than their job title, their job responsibility, or what you pick up on the normal questions you might ask relative to networking, right? And that's part of what we do with the Ripple, which is leverage questions, because we do these Ripple connection questions that are really designed to actually help you go deep quick, because deep is where the good stuff is, right? That's the magic. And it's very relevant to the aspects of a story, because the connection points that you guys had just in that story you shared about how you discovered the product and how you got involved and engaged, you see it. Because even emotionally, even though we're doing this over sort of electronic means, your face just lights up when you're telling that story and you're enthusiastic and you're excited about it. You radiate that, right? So when you get somebody to tell their story, that's where you can really learn to build connection. And so I'm curious, as it relates to my kind of concept of connection point being these little bite-sized morsels of information that you pick up about people, and those become your sort of foundation for building the relationship with them. Tell our audience how they can leverage those stories to find more of those connection points. How do you encourage that process, whether it be somebody you're meeting at an event for the first time, or you've known somebody within your team forever, but how you leverage the power of story to really uncover those connection points that help you build the relationships.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of tap into that from a networking standpoint, or just trying to build rapport with someone on the other end of a meeting, a call, or a Zoom. I always like to think about going nostalgic on them. So, for instance, tell me about your first dog. So, hopefully, if you've owned a dog, everybody remembers their first dog. And like, if you ask me my first dog, his name was Mayday, right? And I never forget that dog. It was it didn't mind you at all, but man, it just made me laugh and smile. And as you think back, and you can see what happens is you'll see it in their eyes. People will look up because they're accessing different parts of their brain relative to that particular memory or feeling. And that triggers different emotions.
Yeah.
Because Steve, the reason we tell stories, it goes back to trying to make an emotional connection. So some facts I want your listeners to know about when you're accessing these points of a story or going back down memory lane is that if I tell you a fact or figure, I'm going to trigger two parts of your brain. But if I tell you the same fact or figure embedded in a compelling story, I'm going to trigger 6 to 7 parts of the brain. Wow. So what happens is when you are tapping into those emotional elements, whether you sharing it and your eyes light up, or you ask them a question that takes them down memory lane and their eyes light up, you're triggering different chemicals in their brain that go to their body, and they start feeling what you're talking about. Not just hearing, not just seeing, but they're feeling it internally. And there's this really cool thing, Steve. Whenever you ask somebody about a emotional question about your dog, your first kiss, or tell me about the worst failure you've had professionally. And don't be afraid to do this in a professional setting. You'll be surprised how willing people, with a stranger, complete stranger, they'll just start sharing, vomiting their entire life story out. But what's fascinating, what I've learned talking to neuroscientists and other people in the medical community and then the research community, is that if I share a compelling story with you and all those chemicals start getting released, one of them is called oxytocin. Oxytocin causes an expansion of the arteries in your body and the capillaries. So more blood is getting sent to your heart. So your heart expands if I tell you a compelling story. So you go back to your original question. When you're talking to someone for the first time at a networking event or on the Zoom, just ask them a question that takes them down memory lane, or something that's going to be, it's going to reach them, or you're just going to say, you know what, I've had a really rough day, but I got to tell you, the thing that makes me laugh so much is I saw this kid running down the street chasing this bubble, and it just made me laugh. So you're just kind of thinking of things that make you laugh, make you cry. That's how you access those emotions in other people that relate directly to storytelling.
Well, let's see if we could put that to the test. I'm going to ask you a couple of ripple connection questions if you're okay with that.
Look at this, man. I'm getting grilled today. I love it.
What is the best piece of advice you've received, and how have you used it?
Guy by the name of Guy Hoffman, my first startup here in Austin, Texas. And we're sitting here, we're getting Ingrid and myself, we're working on our business. And we were just these bright-eyed, bushy-tailed founders that figured we were going to raise $1 million because we'd read about it in some newspaper or magazine. Super easy. And he looks at me and he goes, "You don't know what you don't know, Lyn." And I'm like, huh? So he said it louder and slower. He goes, "You don't know what you don't know." And I was like, I don't get it. What do you mean I don't know what I know? And he says, "You're at a point in your life where I love it. There's optimism, but you can't even see, you don't even understand the things that you don't know right now." And that's a good thing, because it's allowing you to go blindly into the night and try to achieve these impossible objectives. But at the same time, you're not seeing things that are coming right at you, or they're right beside you, or some of the pitfalls and challenges you're going to face. So at some point, you have to, through wisdom and just kind of mileage, you've got to start understanding and see between the trees, amongst the trees, however the saying goes, in a way that gets you to understand things from a holistic perspective. Because it's one thing to not know, but it's another thing to know that you don't know. And here's one of the great things about entrepreneurship, Steve, is that it's all about the question.
Yep.
not about the answer. The answer's out there, but if you don't know what the question is, you'll never really find it. So it's all about thinking about the question. So if you don't know, just ask a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
that will help you on that process.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, I mean, it was as if you were in my head because I was going to ask you a question, but I'm going to change it a little bit because I want to maybe put a different stint on this. But, at the end of the day, what is one of the most challenging things about being an entrepreneur from your perspective?
It's a blessing and a curse. One of the most challenging things about being a founder is that nobody's there to tell you what to do. So you get to pursue whatever path you want, make the decisions in any way, shape, or form that you decide, and you get to stop or go based on how you feel. And at the same time, you're like, oh my God, I don't know which direction to go. Is that the right thing to do? Is that the right partner to have? Is that the right sale to make? I need to say no a lot more than I need to say yes. And having that wisdom, that knowledge,
Yeah.
that gut instinct to help you decide between A, B, and C, one of the most challenging things you'll face as an entrepreneur. And I'm not even sure if you get better at it, you just get faster at it. You're like, well, got to make that decision instead of sitting here doing that right now. So I think that's one of the things that I've learned over the years is understanding that it's okay. And sometimes you just got to go.
So you obviously had the television show. You've for your company, you've gotten an opportunity to film thousands of entrepreneurs and founders of companies. Some that have been super successful, some that maybe weren't successful a couple of times out of the gate. Is there one or two things that you've kind of learned that from those experiences that sort of inform how you go about being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'll say there's two things I've learned over the years in filming over 1,000 entrepreneurs. One of them comes from Red McCombs, the founder of Clear Channel, who we mentioned before, number 247 in the Forbes 400. He said, Lyn, and he was actually talking to Ingrid and I. He goes, Lyn and Ingrid, what makes me successful is that everybody on God's green earth has been given 24 hours a day. It's up to you what you do with those 24 hours. And it was the way he said it, this big barreling, he's a big man
Oh
with
yeah, yeah,
his cowboy
amazing
boots
guy.
that were sitting on the desk, and he just land angry. And it was that kind of in your face, blunt knowledge that, of course, we're all doing that. But it was the way he said it. It's how you choose every single minute of the day has a direct correlation to how much success you'll achieve in life, how much you enjoy every moment, and the different things you're going to share your time and your life with are dictated by those same 24 hours. So that was one of the most important things that I
Love that.
learned. Another thing that I learned in filming, over 1,000 entrepreneurs and 25 billionaires to date. This thing is, I don't know if it's disheartening or it's exciting, but I discovered that there's not any one way to do anything to be successful in
Yep.
the world of entrepreneurship and founding companies, because I was around so many diverse personalities, different perspectives, backgrounds, knowledge, coming from money, not coming from money, getting academic education, not having it. There wasn't any one particular template that I saw that was you could apply it to every single situation. So I love that because it means that so many of us with different skill sets, different energy levels, different knowledge bases and networks, we can all be successful. We just got to figure out what's that formula that's going to work for us, or what path are we going to carve that's different than anybody else out there and is the bright one for us. So I love that perspective by being around these incredibly successful people, that there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat.
Absolutely. And how you apply that time in the 24 hours, right? Combine those two. I mean, those are two very powerful lessons for sure. Who are your influencers?
For sure, Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, is by far the biggest storytelling influence that I've ever had in my personal and professional life, mainly because he's an incredible storyteller. His journey of creating Starbucks, both the backstory that got him there, as well as the origin story of the business, and then taking it to one of the most successful brands on the planet. It's ubiquitous. Everybody knows what Starbucks is now. His ability to tell any type of story in a way that made you want to be involved,
Yeah.
work for him, go buy a Starbucks, go visit one. He just has unique
It's a skill.
charisma, that
Yeah.
charm, and it's very kind of natural for him. I was really, really surprised. And when you meet him in person, we spent 3 days with him filming that first episode for CNBC's American Made. I was just mesmerized by his ability to command everyone in the room, whether it was a big stage, a small group of our film crew, or just one-on-one with Ingrid. Just a tremendous ability from that side. The second influence would definitely be my mother and my sisters, especially my mother. She has found a way to take care of us as a family, and we just have this optimistic look on life because it was her that infused that sense of optimism. And I love whenever we go somewhere, we'd be on the streets of LA when we used to go there and buy clothes for her little retail store in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And she'd be dealing with Iranians and Chinese and Moroccans and then Mexicans, all the different cultures that are in the clothing mart for anybody that's been there. And she was always having these wheeling and dealing. But at the same time, she'd always be entertaining them, making them laugh, and just wanting them to do business with her. She was very shrewd, but she'd build that rapport. And I've found myself, I do this unnaturally now, or it's just a natural habit I do. If I'm checking in at a hotel and I'm having time that it takes with the particular front desk clerk, I'm just getting all chatty Cathy with them, trying to make them laugh, make them smile, brighten their day, and just kind of have that experience, that moment with them, because it makes me smile, makes them smile, and that makes me smile even more.
I mean, that creates a positive ripple for them, but it also creates it for you. And it just, it says a lot about your upbringing. And I hope one day to meet your mom, because I mean, she sounds like an amazing woman. And of course, your sisters, who, I mean, growing up as the only male and with four sisters, that had to be pretty interesting anyway. I'm impressed that you survived it.
Yeah, they made sure that I had good manners and treat women respectively. But I
Good.
also had side benefits. They were all very attractive, and I was the youngest. It was Cindy, Lynn, Minnie, Wendy, and then Linwood. So I had all the guys in my hometown trying to be friends with me so that they could get to my
Good to
sisters.
know.
Side benefits.
That's how you became such a connector.
It is. It is. That's probably true. See, I'll share one thing that relates to something you said earlier. And I think founders should approach their story creation process in this way. And it totally gives you a different perspective. And you made me think about it as we were going through some of my influences and different things that got me going on the storytelling journey. And I kind of learned this indirectly over the years, is that if you approach your story creation process and the storytelling process as if you're giving a gift to someone, you come up with a great, compelling, emotionally evocative story. It's your opportunity to gift that to somebody else. And if your story is that good, it goes back to why I still to this day remember when he told me the name Ripple. If you tell a great, compelling story, there's a high probability they're going to share that with somebody they know. And it just kind of travels with that next person onto the next person. And that could be, maybe it's a product that has health benefits, or maybe it's a product that helps you sleep better, or it's a book that's going to help you with your story, or a book that's going to help you network more. That's how you want to think about your story. Work on it in this way, as if you're wrapping a present for someone to be gifted to. They unwrap that present and they keep it in their heart for years to come.
That's such a genius way to get people to think about that. I love that. That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that for sure. Let me just wrap up with two final questions, because you've just been amazingly generous with your time, which I so appreciate. What does the ripple effect mean to you?
The ripple effect is this kind of exponential lever, if you will. Because if you think about our lives, we all have a unique opportunity to touch individuals all around us, our friends, our family, our cohorts, our professional network, kind of our community network, if you will. And to me, Ripple is about sharing something with them. That could be a story, it could be taken in action, it could be literally opening a door for someone. It goes back to making folks smile. You want something that's going to travel beyond your circumference that you can touch. So one of the most powerful things about a story, it's contagious. If you have an entertaining story, an emotional story, it tells one person, they want to tell the next person, one person. And an act of kindness, a great compelling story, a sharing of powerful knowledge or inside information that's going to help someone, legally of course, if you can do that, you have this opportunity to leave a legacy, even if it's only one or two person deep, and maybe it's only a fleeting a couple days. But people don't forget that. As Maya Angelou once said, people may forget what you did for them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And
Yep.
to me, the core of a great story, the essence of building, facilitating, and creating a ripple is leaving that dent in the emotional universe that people never want to forget.
Yeah, well, you are successful at that, my friend. I tell you, you made a dent in my universe a long time ago. I'm so grateful that we are friends. So let me ask you this final question. What ripple can I be creating for you?
I'll tell you one thing I'm really trying to do. So now this trail mix has become my bread and butter. This is what I'm doing. I put my passion, probably about 70% of my time. I launched an online course, so you can buy the book. I've also got a free TikTok account that you can watch a lot of these nuggets I'm sharing in there,
Yeah.
and 20-second things that will be in the show notes, I assume.
Yes.
So those are free. The book is about $15. Buy that on Amazon. That link will be there. And then I've got an online course. If you really want to dive into how to create a great, compelling story that's going to help you drive sales, get more press, maybe raise capital, that's the type of online course you want to dive into. And it's called Create, as in create your story from scratch.
Yep.
And those are the three things. If anybody you know that needs it can benefit from my free stuff or some of the paid stuff, I'd appreciate you or anyone watching this sharing that.
Absolutely. That will be in our show notes. I encourage everybody to go check that out. Whether you are watching this on YouTube, which I hope you are, and if you're listening to this, I hope you go over to the YouTube channel so you can see Lyn and just the amazing energy he brings to this interview. It's been incredible. But we'll have the links in the show notes on YouTube for sure, and hopefully any of the other podcast platforms that carry those show notes. But
Thank you.
we'll have those links on
And
there for
Steve,
sure.
one thing, if you want an
Yeah.
incredible, organic,
Yes.
gluten-free, grain-free snacks, Share Snacks, SHARSNACKS.com. Go there and buy that. We sell online. Love your support there as well.
I love it. Absolutely. Well, Lyn, thank you so much for the time today. I am so grateful and appreciative that you took the time out of your day to come on the Ripple Effect podcast. I know that you have inspired and motivated our audience, and I know they will be checking out those links. And I just want to thank you, my friend.
I appreciate you, Steve, the entire audience, and I hope all the rest of you go out there and create a ripple for every person around you.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we'll be back with another episode. Thank you so much, Lyn, with another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast very, very soon. But until then, Lyn, ripple on.
All right, buddy.
All right.